Everything's on the table for the Oklahoma Sooners' next offensive coordinator hire.
You are Locked On Sooners, your daily podcast on the Oklahoma Sooners. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Sooner Nation? Welcome to Locked On Sooners, and thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase over at Game Time. He's Jay Smith. I'm John Williams, and the offensive coordinator hire and discussion is still top of mind for most in Sooner Nation. And Brent Venables, in his weekly press conference, went to the podium and actually shared some thoughts and some nuggets on the direction of the OC search, whether it's underway now or will begin in 6 weeks. We'll see. But he really didn't put anything or take anything off the table.
Not at all. It was kind of interesting. The question was asked, how do you say it? Do you want to have someone with Oklahoma ties? And Brent Venables is like, I don't really care. Right? So the mindset is we need to get the best person for the job. If they've got Oklahoma ties, if they don't have Oklahoma ties. Because at this point, we need to find somebody that's going to be able to do what we need, achieve what we need, provide us with some good offenses, and at the same time, a little bit of stability, while at the same time understanding that if they walk in here and have success, they're probably gone within 2 years. I mean, as I talked about before, Saban was 3 years, was the longest. McElwain was the last. Jim McElwain was there for 3, maybe 4 years at the beginning of the Saban tenure, but he went through a lot of offensive coordinators as the success started to roll in. So because of that, the expectation is we bring somebody in, they're going to get another job real quick.
Yeah, and I think you've got to have an open mind to anything because you went with the convenient hire with Seth Luttrell, the one that was going to have the most continuity because he was a guy that had been in the room, had been part of the program, and it just didn't work out. Unfortunate for everybody involved. I think everybody was hoping it would be successful, but it's just not the way that it turned out. So you've got to go back to the drawing board and figure out what's going to make the most sense for your offensive coordinator and your offense moving forward. And you got to find an offense that's going to pair well with the defense that you're trying to put on the field, because you don't want to have what we had with Levy, where it's this high octane, up tempo, nonstop, can't rear it back at all. You're going 100 miles an hour every time, even when you're trying to nurse a 1-score lead. And you go 3 and out and give the ball back in 10 seconds. Like, you've got to find something that has a little bit of balance and can play complementary football with you.
That's the tough part too, is nowadays you kind of want offenses that have either some sort of a tempo or something that can really bend the opposing defenses. And unless you're out there just out muscling everybody like Georgia has been doing over the last few years, and how Alabama did, at the beginning of the Saban tenure, going into the Lane Kiffin era, where they started to, instead of just muscling you, they started to bend and break you. You're going to have to find a way to really get success, I guess you could say. It's probably the simplest way of saying it. And I know a lot of people are really looking at a lot of these random type, quote unquote, gimmicky offenses out there. You got to be careful with those, because you got to remember, when you get into the SEC, you're dealing with some very, very intelligent defensive coordinators who always find a way to figure out defenses rather quickly. And if you don't have the players that can actually do that, granted, I do believe we have enough talent to run just about any offense out there. The big thing is you don't want to put yourself in a situation where your offense gets figured out extremely quickly before you really get deep into play. And that's kind of where the 2-year piece comes in. A lot of those coaches, if they do see success fast, they'll get another job really quickly or get a job offer very quickly. Hence, Levy got, 2 years in and coming from, the Lane Kiffin tree and being at UCF, he ended up getting a job pretty fast because of his types of offense. Now he's got to figure out if he can pair a defense with that at Mississippi State, but not to talk too much about them. What we're going to need is, I want a pro style offense personally, John. That's what I want to see. I want an offense where we're running it down your throat. We're running it down your throat. And we're running it down your throat, because those type of offenses always travel very well. You can just control the pace of the game, control the offense, control the time of possession, and then if you need to launch it, you can. But you're not too reliant on that. You can let your defense do most of the work, but having a really good run game really does help that in the long term of what you would want to get out of a season.
Well, it's the early Saban era offenses, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was confusing those offenses for being 2019 LSU, but what they were good at was taking care of the football, running the ball really, really well. Remember, Derrick Henry went out and won a Heisman. It was him or Mark Ingram?
Both of them, actually. Both of them won a Heisman.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. But they just ran the ball, and they ran it really, really effectively. It was only in the most recent years did they try to spread things out a little bit more, get more speed on the field, and they did that effectively as well. But if you're looking to just play defensive football, run the ball well, get an offense that is efficient. It doesn't have to be a spread offense or an air raid or, the air Coryell. It doesn't have to have that to it, but you've got to be able to run the football well. And I was thinking about this earlier too, Jay, that when you look back at the 2000s, the early 2000 to 2010, 11, 12 or so, the thing that was interesting there is you had a bunch of different offensive coordinators, but they all came from the same tree.
Yeah.
Right? It was Mike Leach that got it all kickstarted, and then everything just kind of came from that. And so even though you did have, Leach gone after a year, Mark Mangino gone to Kansas after a few years, and then I can't remember who followed Mangino exactly, and then you had Kevin Wilson. Was it Wilson exactly? So,
yeah.
And then Wilson was there for a few years, and then he went off to be a head coach somewhere else too. So, and then you had Heupel, and so it was like, Leach begat Mangino, begat Wilson, begat. And so you had a nice coaching tree offensively. We don't have that right now. You had Lebby, and Joe John Finley's kind of the only quote unquote Lebby disciple here, but you don't have much of a tree otherwise. And so whatever happens, however you set yourself up offensively, you've kind of got to hire the guy that's not only going to be your guy for the next couple of years, 2 to 3 years, but is going to set you up to have an heir apparent for after that, because you don't want to have to go into the coaching search again in 3 years and completely revamp your offense again. That makes it difficult to recruit to, makes it difficult on your quarterbacks to try to adjust to different offenses. So that has to be part of the discussion as you go into this offensive coordinator search.
Yeah, the big thing with that portion of it to consider is whoever comes in, they're going to want to bring in some of their own staff, either the entire staff, or they're going to bring in pieces that you want to have in. And at that point, you kind of got to let them do it. I hate it because I think certain coaches here are really good. They provide great ties to not only the NFL, but certain markets to where you want to recruit. You don't want to lose them, while at the same time, if you bring in a new offensive coordinator, it's what's going to happen. But just because, exactly as you said, if they come in and they end up, the new offensive coordinator comes in, last 2 years, get another job, they may have a disciple that's already on staff that can be elevated up, keep the continuity, same thing with recruits and all of that, and run everything there at Oklahoma while the old offense, the previous offensive coordinator takes their new job somewhere else. So that's a few things to really keep in mind.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all goes, but I bet they cast a very wide net in the search. Everybody that's going to be interested is going to get an opportunity, but it starts with Joe John Finley. If Joe John Finley and this offense can find a level of production that we have not even seen this year, I'm not even talking about, get past the Tulane point total every single week, and he's going to have quite the resume, at least, to walk into the interview with.
Yep.
One guy that's developing quite the resume, that's a dude that we love talking about here on Locked On Sooners. We're going to discuss Jayden Jackson coming up next. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. So go post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. And again, thank you for making Locked On Sooners your first listen every single day. Shout out to all the everydayers out there for tuning in. And Jayden Jackson, man, the dude had himself a game against South Carolina, arguably the best game of his young career. Came up with 4 total tackles. Pro Football Focus credited him with 3 stops, which a stop, according to Pro Football Focus, is a play that results in a quote-unquote loss, basically a net loss in expected points added or efficiency. And he had his first career sack. So, man, just ecstatic for him. Again, the first true freshman to start for Oklahoma at defensive tackle since Tommie Harris. And so far, Jayden Jackson is living up to the billing. He's meeting expectations. And I think we're still just scratching the surface with what he can be.
Yeah, he's actually balling out. And I think it's the best part about seeing this is, first true freshman get that start. And since Tommie Harris, and he's out here showing out. He got the grade was 75.2 last week as the highest graded true freshman defensive tackle, which I'm not sure how many there are playing right now, but if anything, he is showing out. And I think he's going to be the main anchor for this defensive line. It's fun watching him, and as well as in the South Carolina game, you got to see some David Stone play right next to him. They're going to be a force because when I saw Stone almost take Lenore Sellers' head off, but luckily Norseller pulled some Superman move and collapsed, and then Stone flew over his head, but Grayson Halton kept the play going. I was like, all right, we got ourselves a very rambunctious defensive line. It's going to be really causing problems here in the SEC. I mean, this is something that we honestly could not say that we've had in a long time. It's wild, and I'm excited that one side of the ball truly is flourishing. Mm-hmm. Once we get the other side, honestly, just to be in the middle and just killing clock, we got an opportunity of being a problem. And that's really all we're asking for. This defense is really showing out.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about whether Oklahoma's SEC ready or not. That defensive tackle group is 100% SEC ready.
Oh, yeah.
Between Dominic Williams and Dejon Terry and Jayden Jackson and David Stone, dude, they're playing really, really good ball. And it's really fun to see because we'd been itching for that, right? It's the one thing that when Brent Venables brought Todd Bates over from Clemson, everybody got excited about. It's like, okay, Oklahoma's going to have a chance to reestablish itself on the defensive interior, and they've done it. Part of the reason they're so good against the run is because their defensive tackle group is so good. And Jayden Jackson, a true freshman, is still a big, big part of that. I did a list of the 10 highest graded Sooners according to Pro Football Focus through week 8, and Jayden Jackson comes in at number 9 on that list. 9 of your 10 are defensive players, and Jayden Jackson is number 9. He's 9th on the team in total tackles with 16. Like, that's amazing. Like, he's playing 31 snaps a game, and he is – listen, not everything that he does for this team is going to show up on the stat sheet, but he's now starting to show up on the stat sheet. He had 5 tackles the week before against Texas, and then had 4 total tackles in this game. So, like, he's starting to really hit his stride. And again, he's just a true freshman, 7 games into his collegiate career, and has a chance to be much, much better as this thing goes along.
Yeah, he's a run stuffer, and it's funny. I was going through it as well. You got him and Grayson Halton sitting at like a 79 and 77 in their rush defense grade. Your top rush defender is Robert Spears-Jennings. Even though he hasn't had a good last couple of weeks, he has been overall he's been nails, and he has been the dude coming downhill right there next to those defensive linemen, making sure that none of those holes are opening up and being able to stop these running backs in the backfield or right there at the line of scrimmage. Teams have been struggling to run against us. I mean, we've only had one game where we truly struggled to stop the run, and it just felt like we just were completely off in that entire game, coming off a bye week, which is even more weird. But what's crazy is Robert Spears-Jennings, Danny Stutzman, Lewis Carter, Kendall Dobie. I feel so bad for losing him. I hate it. Jayden Jackson, Grayson Halton. Yeah, Dominic Williams, Dejon Terry, and rounding out number 10 is Samuel Masigo at 75. They're grading out great on the rush defense, and I expect this to continue to carry over week. Right now, John, this is what I want to see how good this defense truly is, because usually around this point is where we start to let up on the defensive side. We start to kind of teeter over. Now it's time to see if that competitive depth is truly there. If we can rotate down even deeper and start playing a little bit of the younger guys, even though they're not as experienced, but we can get them out there to where they can go get some run and actually be sustainable. It's not we bring in some guys and there's a drop off. I don't feel like we'll have that problem now because we've actually got a nice deep rotation, but we're at that part of the season now. We got to prove ourselves and show teams. This Ole Miss game, to me, is going to be the biggest showing for this defense. If we go out there and cause them big problems and the offense is competent, the defense is going to look good. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a case to be made that this might be the best offense that you've seen this year. I mean, Texas is right there, but Ole Miss might be a little bit better because, the only reason I say that is because Quinn Ewers was coming off the abdominal strain his first game back. Obviously, he wasn't as good as Quinn Ewers can be. And so I think, you could look at this Ole Miss team and you're like, that might be the best offense that they've faced so far. It's a really, really good team with a really dynamic pass catcher in Trey Harris, a really good quarterback in Jackson Dart he can air it out. He can run well. He can do a lot of really good things for you. So it is going to be a big, big test. I'm excited to see how these true freshmen continue to hold up, because you look at right now with Pro Football Focus, who's their highest graded defender right now? True freshman cornerback Eli Bowen.
Yep.
A dude that just continues to get more and more snaps all the time. And so it's really exciting that you have these true freshmen that are forcing themselves on the field because of their level of play. And that's not even the depth or the amount of talent that they have, because we still haven't really even seen a full run from Reggie Powers or Michael Boganowski or Jaden Hardy or Danny Okoye or Nigel Smith or Wyatt Gilmore or David Stone. I mean, David Stone just had 10 snaps in the game against South Carolina and looked really good. And so that 2024 group of defenders, there's a lot more coming.
Yeah. Oh, no, there is. And that's the best part is this defense year over year should be even better. So I know that with Danny Stutzman, who's, our drill sergeant, our leader, Billy Bowman, who leads the team in snaps at 447, the expectation is this is going to be where the peak of the Brent Venables defense. And to be honest, I think this is just scratching the surface. I think the defense is going to do nothing but continue to elevate, especially as they add more and more players that are really built for this defense. We brought in some transfers and we brought in some young recruits. Now they're starting to get that experience in the system. We all know once you get about 3 years into the Brent Venables system, you're really good. And Eli Bowen is kind of defying that. And for him, it's that coverage. It's his ability to play coverage against these wide receivers. I mean, he's got a 79 grade, 79.2 to be exact in coverage. He's causing problems for people to try to pass in his direction, even at his size. And he has like an 85 on the run defense grade. Yeah. He likes to hit people.
I love watching him defend the run. It's awesome.
That's the crazy part is he understands where it's going. He breaks off of the wide receiver and boom, he's back there in the backfield on those swing passes, on screens. He's ready for any of the short passes. He knows he has a good eye for the ball and sense of where the ball's going. So Eli Bowen's going to be great. I'm going to be honest. I'm ready to see what Malik Hawkins is going to look like too at 6'1". I've seen him play in high school, and I'm like, he might be another ball hawker similar to Eli. You may have some of these younger brothers come in and start taking people's spots.
Yeah, if there's going to be one question going into next year with this defense, it's going to be about leadership. Who steps into the leadership void that Danny Stutzman and Billy Bowman and Ethan Downs and Dejon Terry leave? But remember, you're going to have a Kendall Dolby come back, and he's going to be a big leader on this team next year. Somebody who's really stepped up into a role. We've talked true freshmen. Let's continue to talk true freshmen coming up next here on Locked On Sooners.
Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with big returns on FanDuel, America's number one sports book. So whenever you get a hunch in the middle of the game, if you want to check out live stats, view live play-by-play, you can do all of that from the app exactly where you get your, where you place your bets. And like right now, Oklahoma's still sitting at roughly about 20.5 point dogs in this game. And if you feel like you want to get into the action, FanDuel's got you taken care of. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So head over to FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook.
Another true freshman that's really standing out for the Oklahoma Sooners, and that was Jacob Jordan, who got his first action on offense against South Carolina, came through with 6 catches for over 80 yards, and the dude just showed up and showed out. He got into a series, and they threw it to him 3 straight times. It's like, here you go, Jacob Jordan, time to baptize you with some college football action. And they let him speak to the media after practice on Tuesday night, which is also another really strong sign for what he's done in the practice film or on the practice field, in the film room. And I think he's going to earn more opportunities this coming weekend.
Yeah, he's going to be one of those players you're going to keep your eyes out for. When they asked him about, the comparisons to Drake Stoops in the interviews today and after practice, and he said, that's someone that he's always looked up to, and that's who he emulates his game to. And to be honest, if he can go out there and be another Drake Stoops, that's nothing but a great thing for Sooner Nation. Drake was always nails when it come to just finding a way to get to a little pocket, get open, and just make the catch. You want guys that can do that, guys that are pretty slippery and deceptively fast or deceptively agile, can get into those little areas that teams aren't even paying attention to them. He showed us that against South Carolina, and I think that he can provide that for the rest of the season. I also think that going forward, you're going to see a different type of rotation of wide receivers. Now that we've got a different regime running the actual offense, I expect to see some of the bigger guys more often, and then I see certain sets where you're bringing the young guys, the faster, smaller guys to be able to do like burner routes or whatnot. But I could totally see Jacob being that next Drake Stoops where he's just finding ways to get open, and he's used as kind of a quote unquote safety net in some plays where you need like 3rd and 2, you get him at that 3-yard line and teams are watching for like the deeper pass or the bigger guys. He's one that can slip in there and make something happen.
He showed that the moment wasn't too big.
Right.
To come into a game, your first opportunity to get playing time at the collegiate level, and you produce. That's what this offense has needed. They needed somebody to step up when they get an opportunity. How many guys have they put out there on the field at wide receiver, and it's just been like, okay, one good play here and then 2 steps back? Or, you have a series where you're dropping balls or you're fighting with the ball every time it comes to you, or you're not in the right spot, or you're not getting open. And here's a guy, again, got an opportunity and took advantage of it. That's what we've been begging for all season long, whether it's JJ Hester or Zion Reagans or Zion Kearney, any of these younger guys or less experienced guys. We've just been begging for somebody to take advantage of the opportunity. And it is awesome to see Jacob Jordan do that. And whether he's the next Drake Stoops or not, maybe he's the first Jacob Jordan. And by the end of his tenure, we're speaking of him in a similar light as Drake Stoops. I mean, I don't know if anybody will ever compare to Drake Stoops because of the family lineage, but if he goes out there and he continues to ball and he continues to play like this, you're going to have a hard time convincing people he's not a little Drake Stoops starter kit, because, I mean, everything he was doing looked a lot like Drake Stoops, just making tough catches, getting hit after making the catch, holding on to the ball when he did it, running good routes, getting open. I mean, it was all there for him. And this is the kind of guy that every successful college football team has.
Yes,
the guy that just defies the traits, right? It's, you might not run the fastest 40, you might not be the biggest, you might not be the most physical, you might not be able to jump out the gym, but you just play good football. And that's what this team needs. Yeah, and you work hard. That's what this team needs. They need guys that work their tail off, and they just are good football players. Nobody's ever going to convince me that Tim Tebow was a quote-unquote good quarterback. The dude was a terrible thrower, but he was a good football player, a great football player, one of the greatest football players to ever play college football. But he was a terrible thrower of the ball. But it made it work. And that's what Jacob Jordan has an opportunity to do, especially if they continue to get him on the field, is just making it work and being another walk-on success story at the University of Oklahoma.
Yeah, and right now, so I want to see more Jacob Jordan. I want to see more Zion Kearney. He was probably one of the better blocking wide receivers that we had, especially on the run. He's a big physical kid, and he was doing a really good job of actually blocking. So when we run the ball, if you ran the ball to Zion Kearney's side, he actually was getting into those corners' bodies and being able to create some space to where the running back had a place to run. So if you're running outside zones, I want to see more Zion Kearney on the field. And then I want to see you get him the ball in some passes. I mean, not perfect. He's still young. He's still learning, but he was one of the players I was like, okay, if you get this 6'1", 200-pound wide receiver out there, he's going to be tough for corners and safeties to be able to just knock around. He's built to be an SEC wide receiver. And in that Texas game, you start to see, okay, he's ready to play. He didn't back down. Yep. He had 42 snaps in that game. He graded at 69, 78 on the run block. I want more of that. And I think if you keep him out there for even more, you'll get a lot of that going forward.
Yeah, I think it's time to get him some experience. Listen, JJ Hester has done some really good things, but I want to see more Zion Kearney as well. If there's a guy on this team right now that has that wide receiver one potential, a guy that's able to do everything you need him to do in the offense, it's Zion Kearney. He can win in the short, the intermediate, and the deep game. He can run the reverse game. He can run the wide receiver screen game because he's elusive after the catch and he's physical.
Yeah,
get him the ball, get him on the field, get him the ball, and to start to develop these guys. I know we talked about all the guys that are going to be coming back next year, but given the injury situations, you've got to develop your true freshmen to be ready to compete for roles next year. And especially if Jaden Gibson's not ready for the start of the season, if you're still dealing with stuff with Nick Anderson, Jalil Farouk, I mean, he's going to come back healthy this year. But when you start having feet problems at wide receiver, it becomes not just a one-off problem. A lot of times it can be a lingering issue that you deal with over multiple seasons. Go back to watch the Dez Bryant, like the end of Dez Bryant's career with the Dallas Cowboys. Once he broke his foot, the dude was never the same again. And I'm not saying that this is going to be the case for Jalil Farouk, but you've got to have other options in case that is an issue. And so now is the time. You got 5 games to give Ivan Carrion and Zion Kearney and Zion Raggins and KJ Daniels and Brennan Thompson and Jacob Jordan. Get all these guys as many snaps as possible, for better or for worse, and figure out what you got.
Yeah, because at this point, red shirts are kind of basically out the window. You probably, if Farouk is able to come back, you wait and bring him back more so either Maine or Alabama. That way he can preserve his red shirt and come back next year if you want to bring him back for leadership purposes. A lot of the younger players, they've already hit that point. They're not going to get that red shirt. Put them out there on the field. You maybe be able to red shirt them next year. Then you continue to train, but you'll have them available with experience if you do lose somebody. Even from there, when you look at the offensive line, and I kind of mention this to a couple people, if Andrew Anthony does come back, it's probably closer to Maine because then he can redshirt and come back as well. That gives him an opportunity to come back because that'll be game number 2 of the season for him since he played in the first game. Then he'll be able to do Alabama, LSU, and then he'll be at his 4 max, and he can go ahead and redshirt and come back since he's technically a senior without a redshirt. You do that, then you'll start seeing some of the younger players. The main game is when I expect to see majority of the young guys get out there on the field, especially on the offensive line, because that's the game that keeps them from burning their red shirt if you want them to keep a red shirt for the year. You play them Maine, Alabama, LSU. They build up that experience. I mean, Alabama may not be a game you want them to play in and try to gain experience, but it may be an opportunity to toss them out there and see who's out there ready to be a man because Bama's going to come down your throat. Same thing with LSU. They're going to come at you. They're going to try to punch you in your mouth, and that's a good chance for you to see if these guys are truly, I guess you could say, SEC ready.
Yeah, or at least that you have some guys that you can start to build your offensive line around for the future.
100%.
And listen, those will not be easy matchups. I don't care what you see out of Alabama or what you've seen out of LSU, although LSU's won 6 in a row and they're looking like a team that can win the SEC this year. And the way that the way they got after Jackson Dart in that last game, I started having some nightmares about Oklahoma's offensive line situation. That could be a rough one.
Yeah.
But that's a problem for future Jay and John to discuss the final week of the regular season. And we'll get to Oklahoma LSU ahead of their trip to Baton Rouge down the road. And that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Sooners. Thanks so much for tuning in, being a part of the show. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. We're free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Also hit the subscribe button and notification bell over there on YouTube to let you know when new episodes drop. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sooners, also available on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Follow Jay at Unfair Sports, myself at John 9 Williams. But until next time, he's Jay, I'm John. Boomer.
Sooner.